Arsenal Studio B in Chandler, Arizona, this is MayaCast. Welcome to another edition of MayaCast. I'm your host, Tom Shadle.
And I'm your host, Kip Parcell.
And this is episode 194 for Friday, August 17th, 2018. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Coming up on today's show, we are going to have that conversation that we've been asking for your input for, where we talk about the elegance of infinity and is there any way to trim down the bloat. But first, we do have an event. Kip, what do you got for us?
I have an event from Greg Strom, and he says, hey guys, I would be most appreciative if you're willing to let everybody know in MayaCast land about an upcoming narrative event I am running at the Renegade Open on November 17th and 18th. So here's what he says. Send your teams to investigate the Praxis Black Labs research facility and the Musa outpost after intercepting a distress call coming from one of the lead scientists, Druzo Blint. You will battle your way through the high-security labs to discover what unique experiments Praxis has behind its locked doors. This two-day narrative event will feature faction-specific goals, agendas, and rules. So choose your faction, build your team or teams, work with others, and discover the secrets that Praxis would prefer not to be revealed. This event will unfold over 5 rounds, 3 on day 1, 2 on day 2, with 300-point lists. There will be a link to the Renegade. It said registration can be found at renegadeopen.com. And more event info and discussion can be found at their event's Facebook page, which would probably be better link to put in the show notes.
I'll put in the good one.
Okay, yeah. He says, thanks, your podcast pals over at Remote Presence. And I love that he actually sent it in and said, pimp my event with the exhibit on the email.
Yeah, it sounds very cool. So the only other thing we want to remind you about is MayaCast Masterclass Quarter 3 happening right now, due at the end of September, early October. And it's heroes and villains.
Yeah.
So it's all about the characters. One single model per person, one entry per person. We do want a before picture to prove that it is new for our show. Please don't share it anywhere else until the contest. And up to 4 completed pictures, all in one single email. And those completed pictures, please label with your name and a number. And preferably the number you want them displayed, because that's the number that they will load up in, or the order, rather. So send them in one single email to Tom at MayaCast.com.
And Kip at MayaCast.com.
So let's get right into this possibly controversial topic that'll get us yelled at, even though we're not trying to cause trouble. We just want to have a conversation.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles.
They will have a resistance circuit.
Yes. But why are they using such primitive weapons?
Now entering the war room. Infinity has many rules. While the core mechanics are simple enough, orders and short skills, reactions, face-to-face rolls, the bulk of the rules come in the form of all the different weapons, ammo types, skills, and equipment available, and the complex interactions that result when they all meet up on the tabletop in different combinations. This all came about as we discussed 3-wound models versus a model with 2 wounds and shock immunity. And while we recognize the difference, one can be revived or coup de grace from an unconscious state while the other is removed from play, we wondered aloud if it was a difference that makes the game better or an extra distinction, another thing to remember that is not so different that it would be missed. And then followed that idea or of the thought exercise where what other elements of Infinity could perhaps be rolled together, streamlined, made easier to follow, especially for beginners, without dumbing down the game, right? CB obviously realizes that there is bloat in their product SKUs, and each month we see a repack that takes 2 or 3 SKUs and reduces it to a single blister or box to help try and cut that back, make it easier on retailers. It seems like every new unit, army, or sectorial that comes out adds even more special rules, weapons, or equipment to the game. Have they thought about the bloat in the rules as well as in the product range? Well, that's what we are thinking about and talking about today. I recognize that the level of detail in Infinity is one of the things that people who love the game really enjoy, and I don't want to rewrite the game or change it, and certainly not dumb it down, like I said. But I also recognize that there is a high barrier of entry that is often off-putting to many people as well. So these are not complaints, and this is not a crusade, right? Just a conversation of what-ifs to discuss what is necessary in the game, what might be bloat, what could be rolled together into one thing, how we might rein it in a little bit while still maintaining its integrity. Because we're not looking for wholesale changes, and some of the feedback we got in were wholesale concept changes to the game. And we're not talking about wholesale changes like crits are a negative play experience and should be removed, or it should be an auto win for the face-to-face, but not also an auto win. Crits are unfair, right? Like not that sort of thing. Just talking about what is here, what we have, and just trying to make it a little more elegant, if possible. But of course, do no harm, right? Now, realize, of course, that is a monumental task, and one that can't be exhausted through the completion in 1 hour long, usually 2 hour long podcast. We won't touch on everything. We certainly won't think of everything there is. So we invite you to hit us up with all those glaringly obvious things that we don't mention at tom@MayaCast.com.
And kip@MayaCast.com.
So let's get started. And the first thing I'd like to mention doesn't change anything at all as far as actual rules are concerned. It's the organization of the rules that already exist. And because of the nature of the game, it's hard to organize. They've done a pretty good job with N3 over previous editions, right? But like with most rule sets that are full of crunch, it makes way more sense the second time you read it through.
Very true.
You get to the end, and then the second time you read it through, you read something on page 25 where you're like, oh, now I get what that means, and I didn't get that the first time through. And there's, the more complicated a game, the more often it's going to happen. So the first thing, is just simple, I think. That will never happen. Combine N3 and HSN3 into a single PDF where everything's in order.
Yeah, that actually is the most blatantly common one.
So you got all the skills, and you got all the close combat skills, and you got all the weapons, and everything's together in alphabetical order in one single PDF. Now, maybe they won't do that because it's extra work to take those pages and put them into one thing, or they like things that are very pretty, even if they don't necessarily work right, like Army Mobile. They like things that are pretty, so maybe they'll want to reformat all of the HSN3 pages to match N3 pages or vice versa, and so that's a lot of work. Maybe it's because they're afraid they won't sell actual books if they combine them into one somehow. I don't know. But I think it'd be great to have one rules document with everything in one place, right? It's electronic.
Yeah, no,
you could do that.
How many times have you been in the middle of a game and you're like, oh man, I forgot how that worked, and you go to your iBooks because you can save it up, and you're like, I can't. Oh wait, it's in Human Sphere thing. So you go back and it's like, or I think that's in Human Sphere. Oh wait, it's not. So it kind of takes a couple extra minutes to kind of figure out. That happens a lot.
I mean, so the wiki does it, right? It's all in one place, but it's, and it's searchable, and it's all alphabetical, but you can't read it like a book. And for whatever reason, not everybody trusts the wiki the way they trust the actual rule book, right?
Yeah.
But you could put the N3, the HSN3, the FAQ, you could put it all in one place instead of, like you said, having to go back and forth between. And for a new player, that rule's in this book. Oh, and that's in the FAQ. Oh, and that was answered on a forum. Right? So that, what about a living rule book? Again, maybe that means they're not selling hard copies of books, but in this day and age, a living rule book is certainly possible where you can, instead of doing the FAQ, the FAQ becomes like a change log where you can look up what's new in this edition because they've actually gone into the main rule book and changed or added clarification to rules that weren't clear or didn't work the way they thought they were working, or were translated wrong, whatever. That way they can continually clean up the language, they can make things clearer, they can fix translations or whatever their intention was versus what came out as rules as written, as they see the feedback out there as people argue rules and stuff. So a living rule book would be pretty cool, I think. I mean, I wonder how Uprising sold or is selling. That'd
be a good point of data.
Because if you do the living rule book, right, then instead of these 2 book sets, you could, what if you just sold the fluff as a book, right? Like, because Uprising was 99% background. Like, how did it sell compared to other books? Is it possible? Could you eliminate your physical rule book completely? You hear all those old guys out there gasp, like, I like the physical book, the new book smell. Right?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
See, and that's what I was thinking is, like, for everybody that's gonna buy the book, like, they will buy the book even if you have a living rule book online, but how much more would it actually improve and increase your player base if the rules are just easy to access that way? Because like you and I, we're fans of the lore and everything, so we want the book because that's essentially what it should be for, and that's why I'm really happy they don't release the lore online, free for everybody, because that's the selling point of the book. But the selling point of the game is the rules, and if they already make those free because it increases your player base, like, a living rule book makes the most sense because it happens right now. You don't have to wait months. Well, we're working on that, and then we'll get you the printed one, and then release a new PDF. It's like, no, just update it.
And it certainly costs time and resources, but you don't have the printing cost or the weight and all that. Terminology. So N3 added those stickers, and labels and things for and keywords for disambiguation. It's a good start. I don't know if they completely nailed it. Right?
It's necessary, but...
Well, especially with the FAQ and now optional, meaning different things on different stuff. Like, so maybe those stickers don't mean what we think they mean.
Yeah, I was saying, like, after we did the I'm gonna FAQ you up episode, I was sitting there thinking, where
was that episode name for last week?
I don't know. Hey, remember we were looking up German words, and it's like the one that's, why didn't I think of that one in the moment?
Yeah, I forget what that is.
Again. But yeah, like, optional, you're like, what does that mean now? Because it meant this, but now that the FAQ comes out, you're like, apparently it doesn't mean anything. Apparently it's optional to even realize it's there. So that was one of my little note points, was like, clearly explain what optional does if you're going to put the sticker on it, or just don't put the sticker on it.
Or like, there's a capital M movement, then there's lower, which means a totally different thing than the lowercase m movement, which is just generic movement of models, but not the movement skill. And then, so some things represent a capital M movement, and some things do the MOV, the move skill, and then other things just have a lowercase m for movement. And so the things that affect your move with a capital M, you're not going to apply those to things with the lowercase m where it says movement, and it's yeah, you're shaking your head at me, and your eyes got all big.
This is why I like Tom's mind. I told him that this was one of the hardest episodes that I ever had to conceive, because my brain doesn't work on this level of noticing, and that's insane. I never even realized that.
Yeah, so it just makes it. There are people a lot smarter than me that have no problem. Well, of course you don't get the 2-inch bonus to that. That's not a move. It's just movement that you get, because one's capitalized, one's not. And so, but for common folk like myself, it makes it way more difficult to grok and intuitively learn and pick up or even catch. So you think you're playing it right, and then you're like, oh, right?
Yeah, that happens to me a lot.
Speaking of terminology, Mike Sauer pointed out that the name of skills and levels could be standardized to make them way more intuitive. And he says, Immobilized 2 is a stronger state than Immobilized 1. However, Impersonation 1 is the stronger state than Impersonation 2. But Impersonation Level 2 is stronger than Impersonation Level 1. And that's just weird.
Yeah, that one tripped me up all the time. That was one of the things that I would like the terminology changed. Like, I know they have these levels, and that's just so that you get the level that's after it. But I like airborne employment level 1, it's either airborne infiltration or combat jump, or they actually have a name. Impersonation, like when Cybermask came out, I was playing it wrong for like the first 3 months because you forget that those levels are switched. So it's like, why don't you just have partial impersonation or total impersonation,
or just keep your 1 and 2 but make it consistently mean the same thing throughout the rules.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like, do something like that to where it's blatantly obvious.
That can be resolved super easily and changes nothing material, right? Like, don't change my game. No, it doesn't change anything. It just makes everything consistent. And that's a big, I think most of the points we're going to talk about is just consistency.
Yeah.
Making stuff work the same way to make it more intuitive, more easy to learn.
Because that's a common one that I see every new player make a mistake. And you're like, oh, I remember when I did that as well.
Impersonation 2 skill, better than Impersonation 1 skill, but Impersonation 2 state, worse than Impersonation 1 state. Dumb.
That's what I'm saying. It totally Yeah, it's when you're in the midst of things and it's new to you, you're still trying to remember everything properly.
And still on just organization and consistency, right? Throughout the book, cross-reference all the skills that interact, right? An example that Spencer Clark pointed out is that the fact that Sixth Sense ignores stealth should be mentioned in both stealth and Sixth Sense.
That's a really good point.
So when you're looking up stealth, you can realize that models with Sixth Sense will ignore your skill, right? And you don't necessarily have to keep repeating rules, but you should reference them when they directly affect another skill so that you can get to the final result correctly no matter which way you start looking at it from.
That's a good point.
Because you might look up stealth and be like, yeah, we totally did it right. But then later you look at Sixth Sense and you're like, oh, Sixth Sense ignores stealth because it didn't reference it when you looked up stealth. So
camo as well. Do you know how many a couple of our new guys that were like, wait, why do you have stealth? I was like, oh, because I have camo. All models with camo have stealth. They're like, oh, really? I didn't catch that because it's in that little red box, right? That a lot of people will overlook when it's new.
That's like when we get into skills, right? That's everybody wrote about nested skills and getting rid of nested skills, and that's one of them. But like, how many times you're getting on your head? Oh, I didn't see that. Because so keep cross-referencing everything. Just make it easy as possible for people to get the complete interaction. You can keep it alphabetical and not have to put everything in every description, but cross-reference it so that you can find the complete interaction that you're looking for much, much easier. Several people also mentioned all of the rules should be in the rules, and then examples can be examples. But a lot of times what we end up with in the current iteration is that the way the rule actually works is shown by example, and the example contains rules that are not in the block. You know how rules all have the block?
Yeah.
Right? That's where you need to keep the rules. And then examples are fine to make things clear, but don't put actual rule text in them. That should be well enough explained that your example is simply that, an example. If you skip the actual examples, you're going to miss a bunch of rules because there's a bunch of rules hidden in those examples. So, yeah. All right, so we're going to go in order of the rule book as much as possible. Do you have anything else on the broad organization and terminology?
No, those are really good points. I mean, some of the points I didn't even notice. Like I told you, like there's some things like it's really hard to go through and kind of kind of pick out those things that you've just gotten used to dealing with, so it just becomes commonplace. And that's kind of my personality.
Yeah, so we're going to go in order the rule book now as much as possible, but the nature of the game and Kip being Kip means there's going to be some jumping around.
Hence why we have to. It's because I played Infinity so long, my mind just works that way. It's
Silhouettes. You got anything on silhouettes?
The only thing I put down is the way cover works, because it's clearer than it has been, but there's still an argument. It's still not clear, and you can't just...
How so?
Like the 3rd and the 3mm, and it's like, well, it says 3mm, but I can see half of one line all the way down. Does that mean it's 3mm? And you're like, well, technically it's not 3x3. That's like a 3x4. I mean, that's the only thing I really have. And that was the last game I played. I was like, do I get cover from there? And it's like, you put the silhouette up, but if you look from this angle, you might not have a full 3rd. And you kind of just have to be...
Cover and line of fire, I would say, is much more clear in N3 than it ever has been.
That's what I said. It's
every
as clear
game
as
I've
it
ever
can be.
played. Yeah, right. Good. So we've got pictures of silhouettes. And we have the bases the models come with in the packaging when you buy them. But for the love of God, or as I wrote down, footlog. FTLOG.
Is it a $6 footlog?
For the love of God. Define a silhouette with measurements. Give it a base size, at least a base size. 25mm base, 40mm base, 50, right? Say it in black and white in the rules. Instead of, well, if you print this out at actual size and then measure it, you will see that a silhouette.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And height would be nice too.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Instead of just, here's the picture, you cut that out, and that's the size of your cylinder. Give us concrete measurements, please. And also define silhouette 0. Right now, it's the height of your base. Sure, we all know that. But what's been clarified in various places, but is not in the rules, like also height of base. You can also come right out and say 3mm. Because what if my guy is on a 2-inch tall rock? Well, he's the height of his base.
Oh, that's
But he's prone on a rooftop and he can see everything.
that's funny.
Say 3mm. And also say that the model maintains the width of its base. So if you're a 55mm model and you go prone, right, you're 3mm tall, but you still are 55mm wide, so you can't like wriggle through narrow openings, right? Veronin the tuna can.
Right. And see, that's another thing that you just get used to, because it's like you shouldn't, like we use the Warsenal silhouettes. So it's like, well, it's just this. But if you're new and you haven't bought that and you're trying to use the resources at hand, you don't have those. So it's like, if you print this, like you were saying, you have to print this as actual size, and what if you messed up? I honestly like because it's a cylinder anyway. It's just like your zone of control is an 8-inch cylinder. So, and that has a measurement, because you can measure that. So that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, 8-inch radius cylinder, but there's also the width of your base. And anyway, you said zone of control, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy enough, except when there's also hacking area.
Yep.
Which is zone of control, but also not technically zone of control. Reset, Sixth Sense, hacking, dodge, change, face, they all interact with zone of control and or hacking area. And there's debates online, there's confusion in real life. So the question, and again, these are, discussion points. We're not saying this is the way it should be. Except for the living rule book, that's the way it should be. They all, so would it be so bad to make hacking area zone of control? I mean, I guess it matters with hackers that have Sixth Sense.
Yeah, because
their repeater zone of control is the hacker's hacking area, but it's not technically the hacker's zone of control, so they cannot delay declaring their ARO until after the second short skill. So, for example, I've got a hacker in a 5-man link, but he's across the table from you. You move a hackable thing into zone of control of one of its repeaters. You're not in the hacker's zone of control, you're only in his hacking area. So he can't use the 6 cents from the fire team that he gets to delay his ARO until the second skill. He has to declare the ARO at that point. So if they were one thing, then you could delay, so it would make 6 cents stronger.
Super strong.
There's definitely an effect. Or the thing where you force the dodge or shoot ARO and then hack them unopposed. Like, again, hacker and a fire team across the table that has a repeater near the target. Say it's a tag. The hacker becomes the fire team leader, and you move with the first short skill, and you move a model that's not the hacker into line of fire of that tag. Now, the tag cannot yet declare reset because you have not met any of the requirements to declare reset. But you must ARO, right? Like, there's no enemy... no enemy in zone of control has activated yet, and he has not been attacked by a hacking program, so he cannot reset. But this model popped out, and you have to declare ARO at the first opportunity. So now I'm down to dodge or shoot, right? And now that hacker is going to possess you unopposed, or immobilize you unopposed. And yeah, you get your normal. If you decide to shoot, you get your normal roll at that fire team member that stuck out. But is it really a sacrifice? Not if it's a heavy infantry fire team, because maybe he'll do 1 wound to your 2 wound model, or not if it's a tag,
right?
Like 2 tags in a Umbra hacker, right?
Yeah.
We're like, okay, I'll pop out here and take a bullet so that I can get a normal roll at damage 16 double trouble to take over your tag. And
That's disgusting.
yeah, but if hacking area was actually zone of control, then that repeater zone of control, now he can declare a reset because an enemy has activated within zone of, well, you're in the enemy's zone of control, he's not in yours. So yeah, it doesn't work either. But just seeing all those arguments about zone of control and hacking area and transmission matrix and all that stuff.
That's a hard one too, though, because like you said, if you make it the same thing, then it makes all these other skills like super powerful, and that's kind of like why it is declared zone of control is only 8 inches of your model, but your hacking area is within your zone of control or zone of control of a repeater. It's weird that convolution actually helps it make more sense. And also with classifieds, because it's like you have those ones where if it was just zone of control, you could knock them out really, really easy, but when you have to actually get into your zone of control, like you have to move up there and target somebody.
Your hacking area is your zone of control plus the zone of control of all friendly repeaters, but the zone of control of friendly repeaters is not your zone of control, and it's a stumbling block. I don't know if it's anything we have to fix or not because of all the points we just made. Like, does that make 6 cents too powerful? Because now hackers have 6 cents everywhere now that they have a repeater, so that's gross and dumb. Or is it just but the amount of confusion you see, there's definitely a problem there. And I guess maybe it's the wording of zone of control of friendly repeaters. And I hack in zone of control, and zone of control of friendly repeater, therefore you're in my zone of control, and get good noobs. I don't know, like what the I don't know.
Like maybe make that example a little bit more clear.
Just don't put any rules in the example.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's stupid. This one's probably a just me thing. SWC +1, like Joan of Arc.
Oh yeah.
SWC are already positive numbers, so why not make those guys a negative number?
Oh, you mean like
make Joan of Arc's SWC -1.
So it is subtracting from your total. So it's kind of the same thing.
It's the exact same thing. It's just, yeah. I mean, the +1, I guess, is adding 1 to the total that you could possibly have.
Yes.
But as you're adding up SWC, okay, well, these equal 6, and then I have +1. I have 6 + 1, which is actually 5. So I have room for 1 more.
That's funny.
Because 6 + it's that new Common Core math. 6 + 1 is actually 5. Right? Anyway, so like I said,
Technically, yeah.
not a big deal, only minimally confusing, just irks me personally.
Yeah, that's a potato because it's the same effect either way. Like if you just said
Right, just cosmetic
-1,
change.
that it's subtracting
Makes
from
more math sense.
So you still hit 6 and you're still at the required or whatever your max is. Instead of going over, it's just she's subtracting 1. I like that actually.
Learn from Aristea tactics cards and add timing to things more often. And when you add timing, make it more precise. Like a lot of things will say during the tactical phase, fa 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 fa. That's not enough because the tactical phase has several different parts to it. During the tactical phase, after the order count step, that tells you exactly when to do it.
Like how everybody was confused about your tag, which I don't know anybody who's played it correctly, because we're like, oh, your tag's possessed. You can get him back, but you don't get his order because of that timing sticker. And that blew my mind when they
So now you get it back before the order count, right?
yeah. So you use your command token and then you get its order, that order count. That's amazing. But if, like you said, if you had that timing sticker, that would have never really been a confusion, and a lot of players would have had a better experience over the last 2 years.
Right. I mean, you can even use the same logo, that little stopwatch, and you can just have one more line in each of the blocks for each of the different rules and things where it's appropriate. For each rule block to say, tactical phase before order count, order phase after impetuous stage or whatever. Just dial it in. It's only done occasionally where it's very specific, but be very specific all the time would be fantastic. And I bet you it will, because considering how much of an improvement N3 was over N2, 3.5 or 4 or whatever we get next,
right?
Whenever that is, I'm sure is going to be that much better as well. As long as they're not just happy with the status quo, man. Always improve. Retreat.
Hell. I just watched Battle Los Angeles last night. Retreat hell. What does that mean?
Never saw it.
Oh, man.
Quick reference page. Makes no mention that there is no impetuous phase while in retreat. The impetuous section doesn't say it either. It's only in the yellow remember box under the impetuous phase heading in the order sequence summary. In the summary, not even it's not in the breakout where it talks about the impetuous phase. And then at the very end, where it's like the end game where victory points are and all that, at the very end of the rule book, it talks about retreat, and it's in there as well. But this is one of those cross-referencing things, right?
I know I saw it somewhere, but I can't remember where.
It should be referenced in the summary, sure, fine. But it should be in that impetuous breakout where they actually explain impetuous. It should be in the quick reference chart. It should be in the retreat section. Raise your hand if you didn't know that there's no retreat, no impetuous phase during retreat, or if you always forget. It's just it's a little yellow reminder box kind of floating there, and whoops a daisy. Speaking of those boxes, those remember or important boxes in the rulebook, remove them from irrelevant rules. Okay, in the section discussing the lieutenant special order, which is a very specific thing. The order only lieutenant. There is a remember box to remind you that some lieutenants can add extra SWC. That doesn't have anything to do with the thing with the. Also, I think those boxes should repeat rules that are already included in a core rules block, not introduce a rule for the first time. Remember, there's no retreat, or there's no impetuous during retreat, right? Yes, remind us of something you've already said, not introduce us. You say remember. How am I supposed to remember? You never told me.
Right. I wonder if that's something that they might have forgot, that they meant to put in impetuous.
They forgot to remember?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. So they look like reminders, but sometimes it's the only place a rule is written, and that is less than ideal. Suboptimal, as the kids would say. Yeah, so organization again, like loss of lieutenant is in the middle of the order and order pools section. And like, yeah, so it affects the order pool and how you count it when you're in loss lieutenant, but it should be a reminder in this section, right? I think the lieutenant rules should all be kind of in one place all together. Like, here's lieutenant. You need to have one when you make an army.
Right.
It's got a special order that only it can use. This is what happens in loss of lieutenant. This is what happens. This is how you can appoint a new lieutenant, right? Like, have a page for the lieutenant. And then in the middle of the order pool section, you can be like, and remember, during loss of lieutenant, orders, blah, 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 blah.
Makes so much more sense.
Just organizational things.
Do you think that it's like the focus was to try to put everything in their little Monopoly card, because that's what they look like to me, because they're like green and red and blue, that in trying to make everything so clear, but in its own thing, it kind of made the organization they forget to actually like just include them all together, because they're like, well, no, it's its own thing, so I want the lieutenant to be explained here like this. But then the thought process of, well, they can have that little box, but to just put everything about that in the same little explanation. So I wonder if it was just like the focus was to be so clear and evident that have everything in its little thing that it created more separation as a result.
Don't know, not sure. The thing with BS weapon and things capable of making a BS attack. We talked about it last time with the FAQ. It is apparently not the same thing. Right? The FAQ episode and the forward observer bonus that you don't get in a fire team anymore because it's not a BS weapon, despite the description saying it is an attack with a BS weapon.
Yeah, it's so frustrating.
It is actually not a BS weapon, so it doesn't get the fire team burst. Again, just tidying up terminology, keeping things consistent, making it all one thing. Remove the BS attack sticker from forward observer or wherever else it applies, or make it very clear that BS attack does not equal BS weapon, and therefore does not apply to fire team bonuses. Or maybe change it to a willpower attack sticker.
Oh, there you go.
Because it's a ballistic skill attack using the willpower trait. Or like throwing a grenade. It's a ballistic skill attack using a physique. So make that a physique attack. Right? It's just another layer of, come on. You know what I mean? Like, so maybe that's something they could consider is, if it's a ballistic skill attack that uses whip, then it's a whip attack.
Why doesn't it?
It can still have the ballistic skill weapon if it's a flash pulse.
Yeah, like flash pulse is a ballistic skill attack, but if it's the forward observer, then that's a technical attack using your willpower. You know what I mean? Like maybe do something like that.
Anywho.
Ambiguous terms.
Right, and just layers of confusion that it's a ballistic skill attack using your physique, right? And so, all right, I'm throwing a grenade, it's a ballistic skill attack, I'm using a ballistic skill. Well, no, it's a grenade, so since it's a thrown weapon, now you have to use your physique. Oh, really? Oh, okay. Right? Just another, if it was a physique attack, then you're like, oh, sweet, I use physique for this one. Otherwise, it works exactly the same as but it seems more clear. Close combat. Close combat with friends works slightly differently depending on the situation. Okay? If an enemy is engaged with 2 models and then Achilles walks in, he'll get burst 3, but doesn't get any physique bonus. But if an Enematarchos is all in base to base with an enemy, right, 4 dudes, the leader's going to get his +3 burst, and he's going to get +3 physique. So why is there a difference?
I was just going to say, I didn't know there was a difference that way.
There is, yeah.
I thought friendly models granted both, or is it just the burst?
It's only in the normal multiple friends in close combat is there's 2 already there, a 3rd guy walks up, he gets +1 burst for every enemy who's not activated by an order or the same order or ARO. So that's why I said Achilles, because he's clearly never part of a fire team. So he walks up. There's 2 other schmoes there. They are not activated by a fire team. He gets +1 burst.
Unless he's a duo. I can hear
he
people
does not
saying,
get
"He's a duo."
He does not get a physique bonus for those 2 guys. If you're in a fire team, or if you have, because of HSN3, if you have Ghost Synchronized or Ghost Servant, even though you're activated by the same order, only one of you makes the attack, and you get +1 burst and +1 physique. Or if you're in a fire team, you get +1 burst, +1 physique. Only the team leader makes the attack.
That's crazy.
In
That's
ARO,
something
you
that I
pick one
overlooked.
member of the fire team to, and so it's just slightly different. And before HSN3, like Ghost Servant, I guess you'd both roll in and you'd both make an attack.
I believe that's how it used to be.
Even servants don't have, but now, like, because it was activated by the same order, so you wouldn't get the +1 burst, and it can't attack. I don't think it can attack. Will servants have electric pulse? I guess. Huh?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just slightly different, but that difference is there. Why not just make it the +1 physique and +1 burst for each friend all the time, just to make it consistent and the same?
And that's something I totally forgot. And that's coming from the fact that I play mainly sectorial armies. So the only time that I usually have multiple people in base contact with somebody is in a fire team, or they're synced, like Devil Dog and crew.
It's usually the only way to get them there, because usually whatever walks in dies or kills the target. And so it's hard to start piling them in there one by one.
Exactly, right? But that's a really good point, because if it's so rare and convoluted that you forget, because it's not really clearly in the same area.
Yeah, the G-Sync and G-Servant close combat rules from HSN 3, they sort of made the "as long as not activated by the same order" clause a moot point, right? You still got to keep it for ARO, though, because if it's 4 individual dudes that are not fire teamed, they each get their own ARO to that one guy that they're in contact with. But if it's a fire team, only one guy makes the arrow and gets the +3/+3 bonus. So it's just a little confusing, and could be consistent and work the same way for everything. That, I think, is what would make the game much more elegant all throughout. Just apply that concept to everything. Make it consistent and make things intuitively work the same way in all instances. Dodge. It seems simple, but it's a stumbling block. You get movement in the reactive turn, but not the active turn. The asymmetry is what makes it somewhat awkward, and at least like when you're teaching new people, right?
Yeah.
And even not so new. Like several months in, and you're like, so I'm going to dodge, I'm going to move 2 inches. No, it's your active turn. You don't get to move. Oh, that's right. Because, you get the move in the reactive turn, and it's I don't really have a solution.
Yeah.
It's just the asymmetry does make it awkward, and it makes it hard to teach. People don't pick that up intuitively and grasp it right away. Take some extra reminding, which is inelegant.
That is hard. And then, like, you could make the suggestion of, on your active turn, if you're going to dodge a bullet, it have a different name other than dodge. And then dodge is only an ARO, so that they work separately. But it's like, what would you call that then? Evade. I'm going to move and evade. There you go. So, like, maybe make it 2 different things.
If I were a dinosaur, I'd be a thesaurus. And why is dodge 2 inches? Why not is it? Why is it not just half your first move value?
Because they probably tried to streamline it. Because N3 was a streamlined version. They're like, with dispersion, you know how that used to be all different all the time.
Thing.
Now it's just consistent. Like, if you dodge, everybody is 2 inches.
And let me tell you, old dispersion, like, so we're going to talk next week. We're going to talk with Ben about his campaign Paradiso. And Mission 403, rolling a random direction and then rolling a die and multiplying it by 1.2 to get the number of inches.
Oh, yeah. So
that you
not good.
Really dumb. Never have us multiply anything by 1.2.
Yeah. That was fun, though. It made for comical looks.
That is inelegant.
That's very inelegant.
But yeah, so a guy that moves 6'4" is dodging 2 inches. A guy that moves 4'4" is dodging 2 inches. So unless you have everybody's 2 inches, no matter how fast you are. I wonder why it's not half your first movement, which is not part of our mission statement here. It just led me to wonder, why isn't it just not half?
I liked when it was.
This one's gonna upset. I don't know if upset people is the right phrase, but this one's going to. Is frenzy necessary?
That's one of my stars right here.
Tell me what you got.
No, it's the same thing. I was like, is frenzy even needed? Because
is that what you wrote?
Yeah, I was like, is it even needed? Because I always forget that it's even there. There's, again, playing fire teams all the time. You get used to a certain way. That's why you should. Tom told me to, flip it up and change so that you remember things and not just get into one track. So I'm glad that you challenged me to do that for the next couple tournaments, is not play a sectorial. But yeah, it's like you always forget it because it's like, well, I'm not impetuous and I get cover, but then if I kill something, then now I'm impetuous and I don't get cover. And it's like, just make them impetuous because it's like, it seems like an unnecessary step. It's like most of the models that it's on are, you're going to be aggressive with them anyway. And it's like, well, you're granting them cover until they shoot something. It's just for my mind, like, it totally trips me up. And if they're regular impetuous anyway, you don't have to be impetuous. You just don't ever get cover granted. But then it's like, oh, you do get it until you kill something. And it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things that I just make them regular impetuous because I forget it every time.
We prep our show notes individually,
yes.
Right? Not together, not at the same time. We do them on our own, then we come together. And so here's what I said after I said, is frenzy really necessary? Yes, it's different. I get it. But it is so often, and this is going to be funny because you're about to hear an echo. It's so often forgotten or overlooked, right? Even if you don't play Phalanx yourself, you better remember that Achilles has frenzy, so that after he murders something with that Spitfire, you don't keep adding the -3 penalty for him getting cover on his next turn, right? So, yeah, hopefully the model owner will remember, but you better know which models have it too, to watch out for yourself. But maybe because it's so often ignored by putting frenzy guys in fire teams. Yeah. That's why it gets forgotten later in the game. Or would making them regular or extremely impetuous be a super huge change? For a smoke Myrmidon, for a smoke support Myrmidon in a vanilla list, right, that you just want back throwing smoke and he's never going to hurt anything, so he's never going to go impetuous, it is sort of a super big deal. But not so much if he was regular impetuous instead of extremely. Is it there simply to fool their own points formula to bring costs down on certain models that are too expensive otherwise?
That's a good point. And
do they ever adjust points by hand after their formula spits it out and they realize it's either too strong or too weak, too expensive or too cheap? I don't know. I don't know what their process is. But it definitely seems on some models to be a way to bring costs down on a model that ended up being too expensive. Well, just change the cost then. But it's one of the rules I see forgotten more often than not.
Oh, yeah.
One of the most forgotten things. Oh, and like, how many times have you heard or been part of the conversation? Oh, man, that model has frenzy and he killed that dude last turn. He shouldn't have gotten cover there. And he totally should have moved at the start of my turn. And I'm sorry, I totally forgot. Well, it's 6 orders past that. We can't rewind it. Right?
Almost every time I've faced or played, I've faced or myself played with a frenzy model, that conversation happens.
Yeah, so my favorite solution is just make them regular impetuous. If they're in a fire team, then they're still ignoring the impetuous and they're able to get cover and everything. And then you get to choose to use it, whether you want to or not.
Yeah, just so.
And then they just have it. It's not. Remember, should that model at some point cause a wound, then you're going to get angry. And
unless you're in a fire team and you killed stuff and then you break out of a fire team, but it technically doesn't count as killing stuff, so you're not frenzied yet. Like, that's really convoluted.
So if that frenzy conversation, if that got you upset, it's like, of course we need frenzy. It's totally different. We recognize the changes, but if you want to complain, remember you can reach us at willet@MayaCast.com.
That's funny.
And shout out to Willet and Myamer heading out from Arizona tonight, the night we're recording. They are headed out to Spain to go represent the States at the Interplanetario and eat some octopus, hopefully, and
Super awesome.
have a good time. So good luck to both of those guys. We wish them well and can't wait to hear them regale us with stories of their adventures in Spain. Right, so next, do we need both the hackable trait as well as the non-hackable automatic skill? I don't think so.
That's funny.
All programs have their list of targets, right?
Yeah.
And if you're a remote, you're a target of you're hackable. Mm-hmm. Not because you have the hackable trait, but because you're a valid target for that thing, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas any models that are excluded from that get the non-hackable automatic skill. Mm-hmm. So it specifically excludes that certain model as a target. So what does the hackable trait actually do for us? It's a cool green box with a cool logo to put on the profile and a little.
So you're saying just get rid of the hackable and just give them the non-hackable? That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Engage. I mean, the whole thing could be rewritten. There's been enough questions and arguments and corner cases and loopholes that have been found and exploited and discussed ad nauseum that we could stand for a new entry. Sticking a guy on a wall that doesn't have climbing plus, so he can't further ARO you back and you just squash him.
Makes no sense.
It follows the rules, but
I know, but it makes
really
no sense.
stupid.
Yeah, it makes you just engage somebody to try to fight them. So basically, in my mind, the way that whole thing works
Enemy
is
gets to place you.
yeah, it's well, as you did, I grabbed you and I jumped on a wall and I'm holding you there, and you can't do anything but sit there in a stranglehold.
Yeah. So that
Spider-Man.
that could definitely be cleaned up. Apply mods to movement universally, right? Okay. So I get kinematica on dodge moves, but I get no penalty for being prone because dodge is just a 2-inch set distance, and then the kinematica gets added to that. So I can, kinematic level 2, I can dodge 4 inches while remaining prone. Whereas my normal movement is halved for being prone, and I don't get to use kinematica on a guts move because it's a lowercase movement of 2 inches, not a capital M move. And it's not a dodge. But if I'm in difficult terrain, I only move 1 inch for dodge or guts. So that mod applies to both. But I still get to add kinematica bonuses to that. And if I'm prone, they're all just a little bit different. And they don't need to be. It could be very much more intuitive and be easier to wade through, I think, if the mods always applied to everything, whether it's dodge or the move common skill, or maybe or maybe not guts. Either way, prone should make all of those half of what they would be.
Yeah.
For example, so I understand that guts is not dodging.
No.
But as you're ducking out of the way, it feels like a similar idea. It's another thing that can be made into a consistent across-the-board thing to make life and learning and retention easier, and therefore making play cleaner and faster for everybody, because that's the ultimate goal, right? You want a game that plays clean
Faster,
and fast,
yeah.
that's intuitive and easy to learn. But yeah, make those things applied. And so guts I get is a special circumstance. I'm not married to the idea of that, but yeah, if you're prone, everything you do should be half of that. And that ties into why is dodge 2 inches? Why is it not half your first movement value? And then you're prone, so then it's half of that. And right? Anyway, that's what I think. So everything's applied the same way everywhere. Speculative fire. Negative play experience, anybody? Anybody? Now, the old system was cumbersome with the shadow zones and all that. This one is easy, but it's awfully freaking magical.
Sometimes, yeah.
Right? And then the actual execution of Speculative Fire, place the template anywhere, nominating something under it as a primary target, but you don't have to center it on them. You can put the center wherever as long as they're touched by it, but then they're the primary target, so they can be crit. And then instead of measuring to the center, which feels like what you should do, no, you measure to that primary target so that you can actually hit things that are technically out of your range, or that would be in a bad range band if you measured to the center, but you nominate the closest model as the target point, so you get your +3 because that's in good range, but the center is not, but that model is, and it's covered, so you... what the hell's going on with this rule?
I don't know. I honestly wish... So, as a person that's used it a lot, the one thing... I think you should just measure to where the point on the table where you're shooting.
I agree with that.
And then the nominating of a target, it's really fun because you can actually crit something, but nothing else, unless you actually center the template on there, works like that. Like, because every other gun, you actually have to like hit that model.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you're going to use the target list trait to target the ground when you speculative.
Wait, are you saying that the target list trait actually requires a target?
Yes.
Imagine that.
Anyways, foreshadowing. Yeah, it should just be measured to the center of the template, because that confused me a lot. Like, that's actually how I always played it until somebody pointed out that you measure to the target. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool because you can crit now. And I never really paid attention to that because you kind of... I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's an unintended consequence just from the rules of measuring range, and then template rules don't mention it. So, well, that's the target, so that's what I'm going to measure to.
And I mean, the thing with the target though is so that because you have to have a valid target to place it there, because you can't like drop it on 3 camo tokens because you technically can't target them. So I could see why that's part of the rule. But it gets convoluted. Like I said, it just depends on how you perceive that. And I'm the type of person that overlooks everything all the time. That's why I have to reread everything about 3 times because my mind starts going before I've got all the information processed on how it's going to work right. So I can see why the rule of targeting there, but it just, like measuring to the target, but then placing the template that's not to the target.
Well, and explaining, like when you do it to somebody who's fairly new, who hasn't done speculative fire, right? And you walk through it, everything seems like to your advantage, and it feels
dirty.
Like you feel like you're cheating them, even though you're not. It's not a good feeling to have done against you, or to try to explain to somebody who doesn't know what's happening.
I like that.
What do you mean you're in your +3 range? The center of the template's way back here. Yeah, but I'm only measuring to this model, which is, but it's 19 inches. It's only 16 to this guy, so you're in my +3, and I'm going to hit all these people back here, and it just, it's not a great time explaining.
That's one
of
those things that if you use it, when it gets done to you, you just have to be like, nah, it's cool. Because I know how good it feels when I'm on the other end.
Like as an experienced player, sure. I'm talking about like the new player who has never experienced it before. It's like, oh, this is dumb. This is OP. This is a negative play experience. I don't want to play this game anymore.
Yeah, I usually tend to back off of that or explain that I could. So maybe not deploy their guys.
Well, that's the thing. I'd rather have a game where you don't have to back off of certain things just because they feel bad to a new player, right? I mean, they've got to learn somehow.
True.
Anyway. So we're up to the special skills section of the rule book, right? And everyone wrote in about nested skills.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it on the show many, many times. The common example is get rid of Morant and just put veteran level 1 and religious directly on the profile. It's not only easier to see, right, and to remember, it allows for greater variation of profiles. Like, you know what? This big effing stompy robot that has martial arts, it in fact does not have stealth. How about that? because stealth is part of martial arts. Mm-hmm. And so if you give a big giant robot martial arts, it automatically has stealth, except it's a giant clompy robot. And so that would allow you to not put stealth on his profile, which makes sense, right? Whisper Sync technology, they're quiet giants down here. Daiokai does not look quiet to me at all. But yeah, so it would allow you to have a greater variation of profiles and makes it easier because it's all there spelled out for you. And somebody wrote in and said it would make Morats look like they're worth their points.
Yeah, because you have all these
extra skills.
Yeah. The one thing on that though that I wrote down, because this is my main thing, is getting to know all those and then having other people remember them, right? Is some of them it seems like they did it to streamline. So you have like veteran level 2, which gives you 6th sense and no incapacitation, plus you can't be isolated and you're always regular. So veteran level 1, I think it's easier to remember when those are part of a rule, because that's a rule. But then veteran level 2, it's like, why don't you just be like, well, they're veteran, and then if the model you want to be level 2, you also give them no incap and 6th sense level 2, and just make veteran just a skill.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
It's like exactly what I'm talking about.
That's kind of what I like. And it's like, is it better or worse to have that many stickers on a profile? But like you said, it kind of looks cool. Look at all these things I get.
And who are we talking is it better for? It's just better because it's all there spelled out for you.
Yeah. Because veteran as a skill is cool.
Whereas what does it do? It saves ink, but it doesn't streamline it. It looks like it streamlines because instead of these 3 things, you just have this one word. But now you have to know that one word means these 3 things, and now you have to go reference those 3 different parts of the rule book. It actually does the opposite of streamlining to combine them all into one.
Yeah.
Pull them all out, make them all separate. You did it with meta agility.
Right.
Do it with everything else.
It's just climbing plus, and you have that. I mean, I like the skill veteran.
Super jump.
Yeah, super jump. I like the skill like veteran, to where you're like, oh, sweet. If I'm a veteran, I get to ignore loss of lieutenant, and I can't be isolated. But then making it that extra level 2, I would prefer veteran, and then the other 2 stamped out.
Antipode is just one example of a special rule that applies only to one unit. Okay? Why not make them G-synced like the Uberfall Commandos? Right? There's a lot of things that are G-synced. Okay, well now you've got your controller in danger, and probably very, very far behind. So that's probably not the greatest idea. Or make the Antipodes a Harry's team that the controller doesn't need to be part of, just needs to be on the table.
You have to take it to take the Harry's team.
Yeah, so they activate like a Harry's team. Like the whole thing where 3 have to be together to form the hive mind so that they're intelligent. Yeah, it's cool and it's fluffy and it's, holy crap, an entire page for this one unit.
Yeah.
With a lot of little details that you can forget. Why not make them work like something else and stop giving individual units their own rule that take a page to... Yeah. There are ways to make cool units... Right, they'd still be cool as their own Harry's team.
Yeah, they would be.
But yeah, okay. Lists. Lists would be a good idea. They have things that, like bioimmunity. It says you're immune to all biomunitions, right? Treat them. Why not put a list of those? Or the things that reference comms attacks. Why not put a list of those?
That was actually my next thing once we got to this was like you list all the weapons, you list your hacking programs. I would freaking love a list of, well, these are biomunitions. I would love a list of comms equipment, because something technically is like comms, but it's not affected by this. It's like if you have a trick like this, bioimmunity, which its affects, I would love a list out of like what it actually affects, because that's comms equipment is one thing, because I've always been confused about that. It's like, is it comms equipment? And then you have to go look for the little itty bitty sticker. It'd be easy just to have the list.
What's the first thing that bloggers did after N3 came out? They started making lists of all the stuff that we should have had lists for.
Yeah.
Like comms equipment. Okay, so this is another one of those personal things that this is a personal anecdote from when I was new that took me a long time to figure out, and I'm sure it's easy enough for smarter people, but it's just one of those niggling details that, do we need this level of detail? Camouflage and TO camouflage, downgrade to mimetism if they get hit with fire. ODD turns off if it gets hit with fire. I mean, it seems simple enough, but for the longest time, I had to keep double checking to remember when it. Okay. ODD definitely does not need a marker state, right? That's why it's a different thing. But why not have it also go down to mimetism? And now all three of those similar instances of camouflage, TO, and ODD, if they get hit with fire, the same thing happens. Why does it have to be different for that one piece of equipment? So
that's a good point.
But ODD's equipment and mimetism's a skill, but again, why? Why so different? But yeah, that took me an unreasonable amount of time to get straight in my head.
I mean, lore wise, it makes I don't know. I might be reaching.
There are a lot of things.
I might be reaching, but it's like
there are a lot of things like Antipode that lore-wise it's cool. Does it make for an elegant game though? Does it help you with your? Does it really help you with your immersion, or was it cool the first time you read it, and a dozen games in you're like, you know what? This could be much simpler. And still have the same effect on the tabletop. And then you still get all your lore in the italicized text that doesn't have rules in it. Antipode, Colony, 3. So,
you know what they should have for TO camo? Is they should have like
no, keep telling me. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of that. Or the super soakers, like the Predator when he got in water, he couldn't be mimetism at all. So like ODD, it just goes down to nothing. You're soaked instead of burnt. Then you have the same. Then that streamlines things because they work the same.
Then if you go in water terrain, you fixed yourself.
Yeah, I know, right?
Because you washed off the goo. Spawn embryo, seed embryo. Like, all the Shezvasti rules should get an update, because, like, hopefully next year, right? Although last year it was hopefully next year, and hopefully next year. So let's not even bother, but, like, whoa, that seems to be a lot of words for what it does. So hopefully that'll get all cleaned up. So
I didn't even want to touch.
Not even talk about
Shizvasti. I just brushed right over it. I was like, that's...
Nobody wants to touch the Shizvasti. Ew. Close combat special skills section of the rulebook.
Okay.
Unless you had any other special skills.
No, I mean, most of we did Morats. Next thing I had was like ammunition.
Okay, so not yet.
Yeah, no.
So
close combat, I didn't. Again, like this was really hard for me. Like it's hard for me to pick things out.
Several people wrote in with the same idea that there are too many different close combat skills between assault, berserk, 5 levels of martial arts, levels of Protheon, levels of Guardian, differences that are real hard to memorize and keep straight. Like I know for me. Like, just keeping the martial arts table straight is, like, is hard. Like, I know 3. I know martial arts 3. But flipping 1 and 2 in my head, right, keeping that table straight. But now you add all the Protheon and you add all the Guardian. And they aren't all that different. Not really. Like, you could easily add Protheon's wound-sucking effects
to martial arts
as its rule, but then also give them martial arts.
Yeah.
It's
the one thing I like about that though is at least there's charts. So
sure,
and that's why
I think what the people were saying were that there's too many charts, and they're really not all that different. Mm-hmm. Are the subtle differences? Mm-hmm. Are they worth having 5 charts, or could we have a chart? Mm-hmm. Right.
And the only difference there too is, and that's like with a complex game, and if you want to streamline it, it's like if you gave them martial arts and let them suck wounds for Protheon per se, right? Now Protheon gets really freaking effective because you get to use your close combat weapon. So if you have like an explosive close combat weapon and Protheon, if you want a Protheon, you can't use the close combat weapon. You got to make a Protheon attack.
Right.
Now if you change it to martial arts and now they get wounds, you can suck 3 wounds in one hit with the way the rules are. So it's kind of like one of those give and take. Like, is it going to get too powerful? And it's why it doesn't bother me too much because the charts are there.
Could be 1 per order.
True. But at least they like give you a clear path. And I always get certain ones. I get 1 and 2 mixed up all the time.
Yep.
I don't know why. It's super easy. 3, 4, and 5 doesn't bother me one bit, but I get 1 and 2 mixed up all the time. I don't know what it is in my brain that makes it hard for me. It might not be hard for other people, but I do get 1 and 2 mixed up.
Off the top of your head, what are the bonuses for Guardian level 2?
Don't you get like? See, I can't remember. Is it negative? Are they -2? I don't know. I can't remember.
No, everything's in 3s or 1s.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, so maybe less charts, and because they're all really similar. Like Guardian doesn't need to exist. Like, what does it do? Allow you to sculpt dogs? Cool, bro. You can still sculpt the dog and then give him martial arts too. Mm-hmm. And or maybe just give Guardian. This model adds +1 burst in close combat, and so you have Guardian. Gives you +1 burst, and then you have martial arts level 2 or something. Always bothered me that extra model didn't give burst, but whatever. It's literally 2 models that have it.
Yeah, Veronin and Andromeda.
And we need a whole chart for that.
I love Andromeda's model.
And
So
yeah.
good.
So on to weaponry, Kip.
Yeah.
And so organization in the chart, I don't know if this is smart or not. So it's alphabetical. And since it's alphabetical, why not put the modifier after the weapon name? So instead of AP rifle in the A's, and rifle in the R's, and T2 rifle in the T's, and breaker rifle in the B's, you have rifle, and then rifle parentheses AP, and then rifle parentheses breaker, and then rifle parentheses T2. So all of the like weapons are grouped together. Here's all your rifles and all their different ammo types. Or, I don't know, maybe people just look for AP rifle under the A's, and so it's easy that way. I don't know which is better.
This actually came up the other day when somebody was like, where is that? Oh, I forgot it's under P because it's portable auto cannon.
Oh, right.
That actually came up on Monday.
That's funny. Not the same, but I get
or
it.
no, not Monday. Last Monday, not this Monday.
Doesn't matter to the purposes of our discussion. Fun fact, nowhere...
How can I make my my talking game more elegant?
I would start by doing less. Nowhere are combined weapons defined. You know how in the profile it'll say rifle plus light shotgun has a little plus? Mm-hmm. That plus is not defined anywhere in the rulebook, anywhere in HSN 3. It is only tangentially referenced on a FAQ answer in a Wikipedia page for twin weapons. Yeah, it's not even in Scavenger.
Anymore, really?
So you go to twin weapons, and it says, if I have a light shotgun and I pick up a rifle light shotgun, can I apply rifle plus light shotgun? Can I apply twin weapons to the light shotgun? No, it must be exactly to the same, and rifle plus light shotgun is a combined weapon. And that's the only place where you get a clue where you have to infer that weapons that have the plus are a combined weapon in one unit. It's never actually defined anymore.
You know what's funny is where... So in my mind, knowing that, and this is from way back knowledge, it's the only thing that I'll tell you, if it's a combi plus, it's for the scavenger rule. If they pick it up, they get both.
Right. It's not in Scavenger. It's not anywhere in the rules.
That's funny. And again, something I overlooked because it's.
I searched for plus. Searched for plus. Search for combined weapon. Nothing comes up. Search for plus. There are 441 instances of the plus icon in the rule book.
That's funny.
And it's not in there. So it's this whole thing. And should it even exist? Yes, for models with Scavenger, the thousands of models with Scavenger, if they pick up your rifle, they also get your light shotgun. And but only if you read that FAQ answer at the bottom of the wiki.
That's funny.
Under twin weapons, not under Scavenger.
That is funny.
And so, again, with the cross-referencing and the not even putting the rule in, so yeah, whatever. Is the immersion factor of, it's cool, it's like they're one unit. Like, together, that's so awesome. Like the grenade launcher on the pulse rifles in Aliens, right?
Yeah.
So it's one weapon. That's really cool. That's why there's a plus.
Yeah.
Or you could have combi rifle, light grenade launcher.
Yeah, but for purposes of modeling, and if you do have where you can pick up weapons, it is all one weapon technically.
Cool. If you want to keep it, then put it in the rules.
Well, I know I agree with you that I can't believe that. That's hilarious. And again, overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, because other than Scavenger, does it make any different modeling, I guess? Immersion, I guess? Or is it just another weird thing that new players can't find any answer to if they don't have some kind of local rules Sherpa to guide them and tell them, Pepperidge Farm remembers, back in the day, we know that plus means it's one weapon. That ended up being more John Kennedy than it did.
That's what I was thinking. I was like,
the
well
Pepperidge
done.
Farm guy.
I was thinking.
You said something about ammo. So many people wrote in with the same suggestion for ammo types. Okay, where they said divide ammo into two types. Okay, normal ammo, which goes against armor, and biotech or nanotech ammo that affects BTS. Then you apply armor piercing, double action, whatever you want as normal, and that cuts down the special ammo types by half.
Yeah, that's one thing that I wrote. I like that suggestion a lot.
Instead of double action and double trouble, now you just have it's nano ammo and it's DA, so it's 2 rolls against your BTS. It's normal ammo and it's AP. It's half your armor against armor. But yeah, double trouble, double action, breaker, AP, just sticker for ammo class, then one set of ammo types instead of doubling them all up.
Viral could be nano, double action, and then they also get shock.
Yep.
Because it works the same way. And that confused me because the other day when when I was playing Tim, and I was like, it's shock, you go straight to dead. And then Sterling, being Sterling, he goes, only if you're a one-wound model. And I was like, wait, I thought that Viral just ignored the unconscious state. He goes, yes, for a one-wound model. I was like, so it's essentially just shock. Yes. I'm like, dang it, because I don't use it a lot. I don't play Hawk.
Ammo class, nano, right? Viral would have that sticker in the book. It's nano. And then it's DA plus shock.
Yeah.
DA plus shock nanotype.
Never questioned it.
It's also handy to remember those ammo types that don't say AP or breaker, but they have your BTS or armor anyway if you read the description of the ammo in the rule book. Like EM and
EM.
and E whatever.
E-maulers.
Right, where it's half your BTS. Oh, crap. Well, it doesn't say breaker. Right? It could clear all of that up, put it all in the chart,
like
so you
EP
know
nano.
So you know all of the things, right?
Half my BTS.
Right. So my Emerat hits you, and so that's going to be damage. What's an Emerat? 13, I think. Like a chain rifle.
They're chain rifles
against half your BTS. Half your BTS. Why is it breaker?
It's EM.
No, but that's just kind of how it works because it's EM ammo. This would make it right there in black and white. Did you have anything else about ammo?
No, that was it. Was just
that was it?
Yeah, because it totally flipped me up And I saw somebody write in about it, and I was like, I agree with you, because not playing with Viral a lot, and the only reason I did it was with our Spec Ops rules for the Drews. That came up to where you read the rule, but then there's so many rules, you forget that it's only on a 1 wound model that it does that. And I'm like, well, it should just be shock then. Like BTS shock weapon, that's what it is, a double action BTS shock weapon.
So this next thing is going to make people mad at me.
Why?
I guess. Well, especially like if you love Palladium role-playing games and you just love all the different charts and numbers, you're probably. But there's like 1 million weapons. Mm-hmm. Like we can reduce that, can't we? Can we not reduce the number of weapons? If you look at the weapon, and this is where the alphabetical chart came to mind, because I was trying to like compare different rifles and having to jump over 6 different pages of weapons because they're all not together alphabetically. Like, so it's easy enough with rifles because all of the different ammo permutation, it's just, they're all the same range, they're the same damage. It's just this one's AP, this one's T2, this one's breaker, easy peasy. Can't we reach out to some of the other weapons and give them the same kind of treatment? Because there's 1 million weapons. So there's a Spitfire.
Yeah.
And then there's, with the Gorgos, there's an AP Spitfire. Great. Perfect. Exactly what I'm talking about. Then there's the Red Fury, which is almost like a Spitfire, but it's only damage 13. And it has shock ammo. But it's still burst 4, and the range bands are almost identical, but the -3 goes all the way out to 40 inches instead of 32 of a Spitfire. That's really close to being a Spitfire with shock.
Isn't it Molotov?
Can't we just have a shock Spitfire?
Or, yeah.
Instead, it makes it a little more powerful because it's going to be damage 14. But then that -3 band is reduced. -6 starts at at 32. Like, it makes it a little stronger. But is that enough difference to warrant a whole new weapon with different range bands, damage? Like, just shock Spitfire is close enough. Right?
Or shock Molotov?
Reduce the clutter, provide the same sort of breadth.
Like do different ammo types, you're saying? If they're
right, because we want to make it faster to play. We want to make it intuitive. We want to make it easier to learn. And some people are great at memorizing charts and tables and all sorts of different things. All that crunch with the different number, but having to remember that a Red Fury is almost like a Spitfire, but -3 goes out to 40, and it's only damage 13, but it is shock, but it is burst 4. It's like, it's so close to being a different kind of Spitfire. What if we had a bunch of different kind of Spitfires? Then you're memorizing one set of range bands, and you know that they're all damage 14, and they're all burst 4, but this one is shock, and this one is whatever. Consider how close the Molotov is to a Spitfire.
Yeah.
It's an AP Spitfire, but it's only damage 13. So that's really, really close. Why not give it the +1 damage and just make it an AP Spitfire? Just like do we need a Molotov and an AP Spitfire? I don't think we do. For 1 point of damage difference, that's the only difference. You can still make cool looking guns for Ariadnes.
Yeah.
Right? But there are 1 million guns, and some of them are just so slightly different. Spitfire is one of the easier ones to say, this is just like this. Like reducing product SKU numbers, I think there's definite room to reduce the number of weapons. The flavor of the vast armory that we have at our disposal is very cool, but I think it just makes it more elegant and more easy to memorize the closer you make them together, right? And the more we get our face out of our printed army list or looking at our tiny phone screens trying to look up the range bands that we can't memorize, the faster the game becomes for everybody. And that's more valuable to me than a gun that is almost, but not quite, exactly the same as another gun, when you could literally have the same gun with a different ammo type and get in the game and you're in the same effect out of it, essentially. And I don't mean the same, because yes, it'd be a slightly different range, or it'd be +1 strength or whatever. I mean, you get the same general effect as far tactically, right? And for feel.
So you're just saying maybe stick to doing ammo types
Right.
instead of listing all the different weapons. Because if you have a rifle that has all the same ranges, you just have your ammo type that changes what the effect of that does.
I don't have my iPad handy. How many pages is the weapon chart? I think it's like 5 or 6 pages. The number of weapons.
I don't actually have the weapons
out
chart
of hand.
and that's funny. Because
If you like
I was
looking stuff
for 'em.
up while you're playing the game, I guess that's cool, but be ways to memorize. Another idea Nathan Wise wrote in. He said, and this is sort of along the same line, instead of like the disposable 1 DEP and the disposable 2 Panzerfaust, he said, why not just have missile launcher and then in parentheses add disposable 1 or disposable 2 to the profile. And yes, I understand that the range bands are completely different between a DEP and a Panzerfaust and a missile launcher. But it's essentially the same damage, and you essentially get the same kind of effect without creating 2 new weapons that get used up in the game anyway. You don't even use them the whole game because they get used up. So, for example, the Gulam would read rifle plus light shotgun, comma, missile launcher, parentheses, disposable 2.
The only issue with that is the
Blast template.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. I kind of dig the idea for like condensing, but it does give them a template option. But again, it's disposable. And
That would be disgusting, though. And basically, what you could do
how
is
do
you're
people-
like hit
how-
mode only.
Yeah, how do people describe those? Like when there's a new player and they're like, oh, what's a Panzerfaust? And they're like, oh, it's like a 2-shot missile launcher. That's a terrible description because
Yeah.
it's totally not. The range bands are completely different. But that's what people say. That's what I hear people say.
I usually say they're like an RPG.
A DEP is like a 1-shot missile launcher. Well, an RPG is not a weapon in the game. A missile
No.
launcher is. So, like, you're trying to give them a frame of reference, and you're like, oh, DEP, it's like a 1-shot missile launcher, bro. Why do they say that? Because it's damage 14, burst 1, explosive, and armor piercing, right? But the range bands are all out of whack. So, there's already so much to learn. You can give it a try. Kind of a neat idea. But yeah, it does give them that access to the blast mode if you do it that way.
I mean, if they did do it that way, you could just, like I said, they could be like disposable 2, hit mode only. Then it's pretty much the same.
That's a lot of text to put in that little weapons section in the middle.
But like that's kind of where it's like, well, maybe it's not as convoluted because if you just make a different weapon, you don't have to put all those extra stickers if you don't want it to have a blast template. Because then you just like, oh, it's a DB. No blast template.
Yeah. It's it's funny. We play games with combi rifles and Spitfires and HMGs, and nobody is really looking up those range bands. They're all common. A lot of people have them. And then as soon as you're like, oh, okay, this guy's I'm going to fire my Panzerfaust.
No, it's true.
The game comes to a screeching halt.
Wait, what was that range?
As they go to look up the Panzerfaust statistics, or the Molotov statistics, because it's slightly different than a Spitfire, and so that's what I'm saying. Like we could probably reduce some of those weapons and make them, different ammo types on weapons that already exist. And I don't think that takes anything away from the tactical experience. We certainly don't need to add any more weapons, Trench Hammer. So do you have anything more on weapons or ammo?
It was basically the ammo, just because it's hard to, unless you use it all the time. And we're doing this from the standpoint of making it easier for people to get into it. That was my main thing, because you're just like, wait, what is this? Wait, it's just like that, but has a different name. Like that was my main thing. I do like your point on maybe just having the ammo types, so you're not looking through weapon lists so extensively. Again, another thing I didn't even think of. So I'm like, oh, it's the weapon chart. It's cool. You just look it up, check it out, go. But if it was like, hey, it's a rifle or a combi rifle, wait, that's a different range band. Like, you know what I mean? So,
or weapons that one model in the game has. I don't want to say it because I love it. Ochotnik. Equipment. Then, do we really need different kinds of evacuation devices for tags? especially when each one only applies to a single model.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the pilot, operator.
Well, right. We
Totally
got pilots,
different
we got
things.
operators,
Yeah.
we've got ejection systems, we've got escape systems.
That kind of almost work the same, but not really. I mean, it's cool.
And then tag pilot rules like came out in the middle of an ITS season, and they were like half-assed, and they didn't work. And now we're finally getting clarifications that make them work better.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept.
Just needs to be, we're their big playtest, I guess. And so all of our complaints and arguments help them make it better and clean it up. But yeah, I mean, like seriously, one thing has an ejection system.
Yeah, Anaconda.
Can't I thought ejection was iguana and escape system was anaconda.
See, I get them mixed up all
Yeah.
the time.
Either way, each
But you're
one is
right,
wrong.
yes.
How about come up with one thing, give it to both? Because it's, oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's really cool. But if you don't use it all the time, it's hard to keep them straight. Like you get them backwards.
Nobody uses it all the time, and it's just extra bloat that like you look at it and you read it like, oh, that's cool, but then you come to it in the middle of a game and you come to that screeching halt. I'm not going to do the sound again, where dude has to look it up, or you start to do it because you think you know it, and then you've got to look something up because there was a question. Wait, how did right? And I would love to see rules that only affect one thing get reduced. It's just another layer of, oh, I got to memorize that now. Only if you're playing it, man. It's not that hard to memorize one extra rule if that's your model, dude. Right. No, I also need to know it so that when I'm in a game against somebody and they're like, oh, ejection system, now my tag has 5 wounds and 2 HMGs. Aha, that's what it means.
Yeah.
You didn't read it. That's what it means. That's what it says. Like, you've got to know all the rules so that you don't get a guy who tries to play something one way on purpose, knows it's wrong, but doesn't think you know, which is the worst. Anyway, I don't think we need all the tighten up those tag rules, boys. And another simple enough thing that bugs me,
What's that?
but probably only me, is auto medikit is a physique roll,
Yes.
and medikit is a physique -3 roll.
That's a good point. I was actually started to do like the auto med kit because it's another thing that I forget all the time. Because it's kind of like regeneration.
I like granularity, but
Yeah.
there's a certain there's a place where granularity and elegance have a perfect like tip of the parabola before it all starts going the wrong way, and it's just little subtle things like that where those could totally be the same modifier, whether it's no modifier or they're both -3 or whatever. But they both have medikit in the word, but then they act differently.
It's kind of like the dodge, and they should have an evade and a dodge, so that it's easy to remember that in the situation that it acts differently.
And then where's the auto engineer kit?
Oh, for robots.
I want Achilles to be able to fix his own ODD if he wants.
Oh, that's funny. Hey, Tom,
Or-
this is about streamlining the game, not changing
Or
it.
bust out a glue or his immobilized 2 state, or you know what? This is a terrible idea for Achilles, but it could be interesting on a self-repairing robot, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like those, like a Pathfinder, one of your specialist bots, the 16 ones that get knocked down.
Auto engineer kit,
Yeah, nanobots.
or bring braces back so that PAL bots can ride the back of a Pathfinder.
Right? Remember that? Was that the old Magariba? Where
Old Magariba guy
Yeah.
with braces, carry troops around the field. Do you have anything in the equipment section?
No, the auto med kit was my only thing for that reason. It's like the same. That's the same word, but works different.
Yep.
The same way as dodge. And did we kind of skip over the smoke dodge, or is that later on your notes?
There is no such thing as smoke dodge.
Well, that's in the rule book. That's like a special dodge using smoke. That's not really a dodge.
When using a ballistic skill attack, to use your physique to throw a smoke grenade, if it happens to block the enemy
Line of fire,
shots,
yeah.
then it gains the special property dodge. Special
Yeah.
dodge.
Yeah.
The property special dodge. There we go. I put the special in the wrong place. Gains the property special dodge. But smoke dodge is not a thing.
No, it's not. That's what I'm saying. Like, but you hear that a lot. 'Cause it's special.
So I don't think that's a thing they need to clear up. I think that's a thing that people in their heads
Invented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's perfectly clear the way it is and works exactly the way intended. The only problem is that I see, and maybe you have to change the term. Maybe that's fair. It's the confusion on saying dodge.
Yeah, like saying special
Right.
should just be like, you can throw it as a reaction to block
So
fire.
with Kinematica, can I throw it 2 extra inches? Yeah, it's not a dodge. Nowhere
No.
does it say it's dodge. It gains the property special dodge, but maybe that's the term that should
be changed.
be changed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Advanced rules. Mentioned earlier, more exact timing on some of the command token effects
Yep.
and where they need to happen.
I like that.
And hacking.
Didn't even
How
touch
much time
it.
we got left? Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't really even touch it.
So several people asked to reduce the amount of programs. Several people asked to remove the different traits like sword and claw and blah, because those are largely meaningless. I said it seems more like a designer rubric than actual necessary. Like, okay, this hacking device has this class of programs. Right? We don't need to know that.
No.
Because it doesn't have a game effect really. So if you get rid of those effects, now it allows for hacking devices to have their own specific suite of programs in a list. Okay? Pages 249 and 250 are all we need. We do not need page 161. Page 161 could be one tiny block. It doesn't need to be a whole page. It could be a quarter of a page. All the information we get on 161, we could get in a quarter of a page. And that's where the 4 original hacking devices are listed.
Yep.
And all of the nonsense information that's on there. That could the stuff we actually need, like a defensive applies firewall mods. Like that could all be handled in a quarter of a page. And then we need the charts that are on 249 and 250. If you remove sword and claw and what thing has what, now you can just make a list for each device. And then you can still put the upgrades on. Doesn't change that at all. But it also allows you to remove the worse programs that have a duplicate effect. Because, right? Okay, I'm going to move this remote over here. Well, I have a repeater there. Yep. He's like, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Because now he's got to look up all his hacking programs, and he's new, so now he's reading every single one because he doesn't know which version of immobilized one he wants to apply to you for 2 turns.
Right.
I mean, do we really need 4 or 5 different ways to get immobilized one? Or, I mean, and yeah, they have a slightly different damage, or maybe
different damage,
a slightly different
dice.
burst.
Yep.
Or maybe a different ammo type. Do we really need 5 different ways to put somebody immobilized one for 2 turns? Really?
I would
Maybe not so much.
I would agree with you on certain ones of those because like maybe only have 2 because it's like most people only use the same ones anyway. If you have access,
What does that show you?
that's what I'm saying.
Statistically, some are better.
Yeah, if you have access to a certain thing, of course you're going to use that the majority of the time. Killer hacking devices, I saw suggestions saying just like only give it red rum because that's usually what people use, but not always. Like sometimes you do want that extra burst.
Trinity.
Yeah, sometimes you do want the different ammo types. I like the different ammo types, but you are right. Like if you have access to Overlord, see, I don't even have the chart in front of me, so I forgot. But the damage 16 one, you're going to do that.
Total control.
Total control, you're going to do that every time over Overlord.
Damage 16 double trouble versus damage 14 breaker, or what do they call it? I guess it's breaker, the half BTS.
Yeah, it's breaker. So
Well, it's breaker on a gun, but it might be different for hacking, or I don't know. See?
no, it's still breaker. But yeah, you're going to use that every time. But it's like, well, so assault hacking devices have this and only this, and regular hacking devices or hacking device plus. It's like you have all the options, which
It's
is
too many
cool.
options. It's too many options.
That's what I'm saying. When you're a new player, or I mean, even now, sometimes I get confused. I'm like, oh wait, which one? Oblivion or Carbonite? I think they're the same thing. You know, the one that isolates you. That's the one I'm doing.
That's Oblivion.
I know, but I always say Carbonite because I don't know, you just get the names mixed up. But because there's so many choices, and that's usually the conversation we have. It's
And
like,
how about
the one that does this? Okay.
And how about you add an ammo column next to damage instead of clumping it in the special thing? There's a column for special at the very end of the hacking programs, and that's where they put the ammo type and how long it lasts and what it does. And how about put your ammo type next to damage, just like a weapon, so you know if it's normal or if it's breaker or if it's double trouble or whatever, instead of throwing it over there in the synopsis of all the different specials. That'll make that easier to read as well. Yeah, and then the other thing I had was about the special terrain rules. Like, they're so far at the back of the book. They feel like an afterthought.
They kind of are.
And they're thrown back there, and nobody. If you want people to use those, why not? Why are those not up in the movement section?
Should be in the
They
movement.
directly affect how you move. They should be right there. Every other game you've ever played, right? Movement. You can move the number of inches equal to your movement value, and then it's like difficult terrain, half, or whatever, right? Like it's right there in the movement section. Why are they all the way in the back like a redheaded stepchild?
Where usually
It's almost like
overlooked.
they were. It's almost like where they're usually overlooked. Exactly. It's almost like they were. It's like they're embarrassed about them, so they put them in the back. I don't know. It seems weird to have them all the way at the back there.
Yeah, I actually, my note on that was that they're so far in the back that most people don't even know they exist. And there's nothing out right now other than War Corps organizing events that actually bring them to light, unless you play like the Karages or the Wotans. So I'd actually like to see it more in ITS. Like maybe make it optional to where, hey, this plays with these, but you have the option to not use those rules, because then everybody's gonna be like, wait, what do those do? And then it brings it to light. And I would actually like to play with more of the terrain rules because they're fun. They kind of make things relevant, kind of like when ITS came around and Specialists came about. It made a wide vast of models relevant, so it wasn't the same thing over and over and over. It actually enhanced the game experience. So like I would like that too, and this is something that could happen. I would like that to be more of a forefront in the ITS season. I don't know if it'll happen in 10, but maybe in 11, like you make that a thing. Like we're using terrain rules, like we have Soldiers of Fortune and blah, 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 blah. Like maybe right into the mission, you can use X, Y, and Z for these zones optionally and let people know beforehand. Because we're doing that, something similar to that here in a couple weeks, correct?
I don't know what they're doing. I mean, yeah, you can move the terrain, difficult terrain, very difficult terrain. You can move that up to where the movement is. You can still leave scenery structures and the destroying terrain optional rules. You can leave that in the back as an appendix, but make them more a part of the rules, not left as an afterthought. And what the hell, landing crafts? Speaking of superfluous rules that have no place in the book, like, okay, if you're going to make a special scenario, you're probably already okay with making up your own rules. And if you wanted a landing craft, you could, like, what is this landing craft rule that never? Because there was one in one Paradiso mission.
Yeah, I was gonna say
that's
that's
a whole
like
section in the rule book for landing crafts. What is? We don't need this rule. That's why terrain rules feels like an afterthought, because it's stuck in with the terrain rules, and you're like, what is this non sequitur piece? Okay, landing crafts for no reason, because they're also not in any of the missions in the back of the book, so that seems like a weird thing to add.
It's a pullover, because I remember that was before there were missions. Like that was one thing you could do, and they had these are our drop ship landing craft things that you could download, and and paper craft. So it's something that's like, well, we've always had it, so we're going to add it.
So in HSN3, we have low tech. And it got me thinking, can't low tech and symbiont armor and transmuted all sort of be like the same rule? You have two profiles. You go to the second one when you're damaged. Cool. right? The only one that's different is Susan and her mechanical transmutation, because you get to pick when you do that.
Yeah.
Not just like when you take a wound.
Yeah, that's different. No, I do agree, because like when the Blackjack came out, we're like, oh, he basically has symbiote armor. But it's not symbiote armor, it works the exact same.
Well, but is he 2 wounds in 1 or is he 1 in 1?
1-on-1.
See? So like symbiote armor, the only different thing is like, well, if you get hit with fire, all of your active symbiote, you lose all your active symbiote, but then you just go inactive. Or okay, that applies to the Ectros and Nema and the Gorgos, and I think that's it. Right? So
because you have to have more than one.
Does that need to exist? About to pile in the Toha here, actually. But they all do the same thing. Transmuted. You take that wound, you go to the second profile. If you take more wounds, it's on the first profile's armor, and it applies to the second. But, the difference is transmuted, you get bigger, and symbiote armor, you get smaller. Right?
And with low tech, you stay the same. And so there's where like the difference.
Low tech, you get crummier with low tech, just like symbiote armor.
Yeah, I mean the whatchamacallit, silhouette stays the same.
I wasn't talking about silhouette.
Oh, I thought that's what you're saying.
I was talking about your abilities.
Okay.
You get symbiote armor, you take the wound, you get worse. Transmuted, you take the wound, you get better. You either you become a dog, right? Transmuted is dog warrior, and it's also isn't it also the drop guys for Onyx?
Fracta,
yeah. So like they, I guess it's debatable whether the Fracta gets better or worse. I think it gets better.
It does get better. Basically, its symbiote armor grows more once it takes a wound.
It gets stronger. And then obviously a dog face becomes a dog warrior, right? And that's better. So, but basically they go from one profile to the other, and they all work kind of the same way, and I don't think we need 3 rules. That was a lot of talking for what I thought was going to be like 1 second. And speaking of piling on Toha, screw Ferroware. Just give them hacking. Like, seriously, it's essentially the same thing, but it's an odd bloat and an unnecessary complication that, which, I mean, people are maxing out the mates and not taking bombs most of the time anyway. Now, the people that use bombs really love the bombs, but you're sacrificing mates for that, and a lot of times people say it's not worth it. So just give bombs the Fast Panda rule and make the owner a hacker, and give it, like, even if it's a Toha hacking device with its own suite of programs, it's basically the same thing. These extra Toha rules, like Korathar discipline, it means nothing. It means nothing, right? The rules for symbiomates and symbiobombs should be under symbiomate and symbiobomb, which they are, and the model gets them in the profile, but then he needs Korathar discipline in order to distribute them to friendly models. It's a waste of a quarter of a panel of a page. It's so sorry, Toha, but I really wish just to bring everything in line so everything's symmetrical and everything is elegant and consistent. That's the word I was hunting for. So everything's consistent. You should just get hacking programs, even if they're different hacking programs. But no, I've got a little bug, and he's got to be attached to a guy, but then he can run up to something, and then one of these hacking programs can happen one time.
One time too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird.
1 times 2 is 2. I don't understand, like I said before, why we need guard or guardian, whatever you want to call it, in addition to the rest of all the other close combat skills. They're not different enough to martial arts to warrant a whole new rule just so they can sculpt some companion dogs. Make that more interesting. It's just not an interesting design choice. Oh, here's another chart for close combat on a model that hopefully never gets anywhere near a close combat.
Yeah, I was super excited for it when it was, hey, they're going to have this new rule, and they'll have these, I thought it was going to be like a
little too much.
More like an antipode.
Just like a...
like the canine antipodes. That's what I thought Guardians were going to be like.
Heavy multi, light multi. These are superfluous terms. Again, it seems like a design rubric that they need when they're coming up with weapons and what they're going to do. The modes on the chart tell us what they do, whether it's double action or whether it's normal or whether it's shock or whether it's AP or whatever. That tells us. We get modes, and it tells us what we do. The phrase heavy multi, light multi, that makes no difference to that doesn't need to appear on the weapon chart, doesn't need to appear in the book. We don't need to know that all of the light multi-weapons have this and this as options. No, because you're already giving us a chart with modes. Mm-hmm. So it's duplicate, extra space, extra words, and yeah. So we've got like this cool, like streamlined Lexus, right? Mm-hmm. That looks like a rocket ship. And it's very smooth and curvy lines, very aerodynamic. And then we start adding things to it, like a bike rack, and then a luggage rack over the trunk, and then and we start adding all these things, and we start like, oh, that'd be really cool to have. We should put that on, and like, yeah, my kids as Star Wars characters, my whole family as Star Wars stick figures on the back window. That seems like a good idea, right? And then by the end, like, you take a step back. Everything seemed cool at the time. You take a step back and you look at it and you're like, oh, maybe we've gone too far. You know, like, and so, like, yeah. Anyway, I think there are things that could be condensed or streamlined or eliminated completely that we don't need to know about. Light multi, heavy multi, it doesn't mean anything. It means these things, but that doesn't mean anything to us because we just need right?
Yeah, you just know that a multi-rifle, it's like, oh, I get these 2 ammo types.
Hey, there's my modes. Oh, it's light and multi? What does that mean? Oh, it means I get these 2 modes that are in the chart.
Yeah.
Cool. So, anyway, yeah. If you disagree with us, if you agree with us, if that made you think of things you didn't send in earlier because like that made you think of something else, keep sending them in. Tell us how wrong we are. I know people really don't like the idea of 2 wounds plus no wound in cap and shock immunity going away because, oh my God, the difference is huge, Kip. One of them can be revived, one of them can't. One of them can be coup de grace, the other one can. Like, it's a huge difference. Doesn't seem like a very huge point difference in their formula either.
There's not.
And so that's the thing, like... is change scary? Yeah, it is. People don't want anything to change. Is change necessary sometimes? Yes. Right now, we live that every single day that we need change. But this was just like, what things could we roll together? How do we smooth that Lexus back out into a nice aerodynamic vehicle again? And are these things super necessary? Is the difference between a Molotov and a Spitfire, right? Spitfire?
Molotow's the AP, Red
the
Fury
AP Spitfire.
is the shock.
Right.
Yeah.
So the difference between a Molotov and an AP Spitfire really necessary? Is the word Molotov, does that inspire you so much in the lore that you get so immersed that it's, do we need 6 pages of weapons? Could we do with 3 pages of weapons? Or 4?
And still have the same variation.
Right. The same basic tactical thing, like, and will it make play faster on the table because things are more
easier to remember,
intuitive, more easier to remember, easier to memorize because they are all consistent and parallel and work the same way when they feel like they should work the same way. It's interesting. But still like to hear more of your thoughts on that. Not necessarily those wholesale game changes like we said, just how do you make it so that it goes faster but doesn't lose
anything that we
like
love about it. The thing that we love the game about. I was stoked. I really want to thank everybody for writing in because, as I told Tom when I got here, like, just reading your emails, I was like, man, I never even thought of this. Like, that's something I didn't notice. So like talking to Tom about it, he notices things that I overlook because I tend to just be like, oh, that's the way it is, and forget about it. Like, head in the clouds.
Well, you're also very positive, and I'm very cynical, and so
we make a good team.
Therefore. But yeah, everybody, thank you very much for listening to episode 194, and until next time, get out there and support your local game store.
find out how you can support the show, go to patreon.com/MayaCast.
You can find us online at www.MayaCast.com.
We are on Facebook at facebook.com/InfinityMayaCast.
Follow at Maya Podcast on Twitter.
Join the MayaCast forum group on Facebook.
And as always, you can email us at tom@mayacast.com.
And Kip at MayaCast.com.